Hey there, gentlemen. I'm not sure if we have a meeting today, but I was jumping on just in case anybody had questions on Proposal Lee or just wanted to talk about that for a bit.
All right, so I'm going to take a look at that one.
Me too. I did hear, I guess I missed the OCI meeting. I heard that we presented it there, or you presented it there too.
Yeah, I kind of gave a quick rundown of it. My goal of talking about it over there was just to get feedback from them of anything that we might be missing on our side that we want to include when we present it later on. So it wasn't a formal presentation. It was just a, hey, here's what we're thinking of doing. Is there something we need to do for you before we put this together?
Awesome. What was their like general response?
In general, it's kind of the same as always. It's kind of the nods of, yeah, that looks interesting. No ideas from us. Sounds good.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited that it's starting to get, socialized, even if there's not a lot of feedback yet.
Yeah. And to some degree, you throw a big proposal over there and just say, hey, here's what we're thinking of. I think a lot of the time people might just be spending reading through it saying, what on earth is he asking us to do? And so some of that might just be shell shock or just too much detail there at once. But yeah, my overall goal is just to make sure, especially, I think a lot of people have been giving thumbs up to this before have been more the end user side. And I want to make sure we that we include the registry operators too of, hey, this all looks great from a client side, but when we try to implement this on the server, might be issues. So I want to weed any of those out earlier rather than later. I did try when I was going through working on some filtering ideas to not put stuff in there that would make the server's life more difficult. So I only did string comparisons. I didn't do any automatically convert annotations to numbers or dates or anything like that, because I figured that would be chaos to try to deal with all the different parsing and everything else that would go on.
Yeah.
So along those lines, I try my best to keep it easy, but I'm sure I missed a detail here somewhere. And so whatever we do to sort those out, the better. So 5 minutes after, how would you gentlemen like to use the time today, or do you want some time back? And I'm also happy just to leave the presentation up as a, working session to read through it yourselves at your own pace, and then do the traditional Amazon thing of, okay, 20 minutes left and think about it.
I think the thing that I think is, I don't know, new and a little scary is just filtering on any annotation. Sort of thinking through how that gets implemented with the lack of constraints on the annotation fields.
Yeah.
And I think
So
the way I'd been thinking about it, we would maybe pick a couple filterable things that registries should pull out, but not necessarily allow any annotation to be filtered on.
Yeah. And so for that, I'm thinking back to all the requirements questions. I know there are a couple in there that are there saying, kind of just sort by arbitrary dates and other versions and things like that. And I try to get as close as possible without putting too much overhead on the registry operators. But I'm sure there's ways we can make this better for you. Picking out selected fields, the thought I have there is that might be a good starting point, but I can imagine the endpoint from the user that they're going to want to get to is going to be, I've got yet another field. I've got something different, and there's always going to be yet another field they're asking for. And then having some registries that can filter on everything, some registries that can only filter on 3 fields. That's not a situation we want to be in either.
Right.
That said, one of the things I did in here was included in the response back to the client. This is what I did filter on. So the server says, you asked me to filter on these 6 things. I gave you 2 of them. And I left that in there knowing that if we come into the situation, because the filter was always a should, it was never a must. And so if the server comes back and says, yeah, I filtered on these 2 things that you gave me, the client can then say, okay, I didn't get everything I asked for. Let me do all the other filtering on my side. Because the filters are all, you're just going to send more responses back, not less. And so there's always the data there for the client to do the filtering on their side if they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting approach using the index. And from the, I think the client perspective, you might look at that and look for changes and stuff as well, which is decent to use the same type. For the artifact, is this something you just pulled from the previous artifact spec proposal?
Yeah, the artifact
As
neotype,
is.
pretty close to what they had. I'm not sure if I added many changes in there other than just all I added was the reference. I didn't add the artifact type field that we were talking about before.
Okay. Yeah, I guess from my perspective, you can go through proposals like, you know, A through Z, but the one that wins is the one that shows that the implementation is feasible. And yeah, I mean, I think your approach here makes sense to almost just implement both the image spec and the artifact spec, and maybe one of them will disappear in the final version.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave this up in case anybody is crazy enough to watch the recording later on. They can at least see what we're talking about. Because you never know. Sometimes people look at these recordings. Probably just Vincent on his own. Yeah, and I did get some questions a few times on, yeah, we're talking about 2 things. We've got the image manifest, but we've also got the artifact manifest. And does it make sense to modify the image manifest with this reference and not change a version number, not do anything else to it? Are we breaking any of the promises that this is all version data? Are we screwing with the artifact manifest or the image spec when we shouldn't be able to? And I'm hoping that we are able to get that through as is, because I just know that there's going to be someone out there that is looking at version 1, schema version 2 here. And if we change these version numbers, if we do anything else to modify this to look different so that we make this different from what it is today, we'll break existing clients. And so I was trying as best I can to say, if we just add a field and we don't take anything away, we don't change anything otherwise, hopefully most well-behaved clients will just accept that as is. And if they don't know what to do with it, they just ignore it. If they do know what to do with it, great.
Yeah, it's tricky. I've been against this approach from the beginning, but it's my opinion on it. That's why I feel like this working group's responsibility is to figure out how feasible it is. What are the edge cases of doing this? I mean, I agree, like it's easier from the standpoint of like existing registries shouldn't have any issue accepting it for the most part. But I'm not so sure that's just a, like slipping features in invisibly. I'm not sure what the real value is. Like we're adding a new feature, like support. I like explicit support for new features. You know, it's not like we're trying to like work around some like issue. When you're like trying to work around something, you know, then these sort of workarounds make sense. But for new features, I think it makes sense to add new types. But so that's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, in the end, like we should make a decision not based on opinions, but based on like, oh, this is what we've shown works.
Yeah. And in a way, I would love if we could say all registries are forced to upgrade, and then we get the new artifact spec, we get the API, and we're just done. I just know from my painfully hard experience that old registries stick around for a lot longer than we want them to.
Yeah, but old registries don't need to support the new features. And I guess that's the thing. Like the problem here is like the first mover approach. Like we add support for this, like who's gonna be the first registry to implement it and support it? Who's gonna be the first client? Like it's hard. Like in the past, like users were kind of forced onto it by upgrading Docker to things, and it was painful and it took a long time, you know, and it took like, you know, one company basically forcing it on the whole community to get like registry 2 out there. But at the time it was really controversial. Like I think if we went through a process of trying to come to a consensus, like I don't think it would have, well, I don't think a consensus ever would happen.
We do have the disadvantage of getting more and more legacy the longer we do this too.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's why I kind of feel like I like this approach in that we should be trying all of the stuff really, and seeing which one works. Like for prototyping, we should try it all. For like the final version, we cut everything that's not needed.
Yeah. One of the big reasons that I'm looking at this of how do we do this now is people are already doing this now. We've got cosign out there today that's already pushing up artifacts like this with the signatures on along the side, and then other things.
Are they pushing it in a reference field or in the annotation field?
So what they're doing today is just the, I think they've got their own index on top of it if they push multiple things, but they've got the digest tags today. And so they're working with the image spec as it is today. They're pushing up the artifacts up there in image spec, and they're using these digest tags. They don't have the extra hash to deduplicate things. So I think they're throwing an index on top of it. But yeah, as much as I want to say, let's come up with something new and then big bang, have everybody switch over, it's like, we already got clients out there pushing up these extra reference types already before we've even finished this thing.
Yeah, but the thing is, if what they're doing works today, then let it, like we don't need to break it, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think the way I went with this was just to formalize a lot of what they were doing with a few small tweaks. And that's where Dan jumped on the PR and said, yeah, it looks good to him. So I think we kept it close enough to what's happening there right now that it's not too much of a breaking change for them. And so formalizing what they're doing and then saying, okay, that's great. You know, what we're doing with this, we got something there. Now let's get to the next stage where we're going to add the API, and then let's get to the final stage of the new reference, the artifact object itself. Because
Yeah,
I do think there's going to be this in-between state where we've got the reference field out there. They could also have the reference field on this other artifact as well, but we're going to have the API that gets added. And that's something that they don't have right now. And this, I think, is going to make a big difference over those digest tags.
yeah, I think the API field is probably the biggest change here. The art, or like adding a new artifact type, I think is interesting. I would like to see that happen. But when we talk about like what's being done today, it's like, yeah, cosign's doing it, and then a lot of different companies are doing their own thing for implementing a lot of this stuff. Like we can't kind of like standardize them all. Like if the approach of this working group is to find like the best way to do it across the community, I mean, it's hard because like OCI is really bad at building novel things.
Yeah.
And without anybody pushing this new artifact type, I struggle to see how it's going to gain traction. I mean, I want it to. I struggle to see how it will.
I think there's going to be a point where someone take build kit the way they've been doing their stuff today and throwing their cache things out there as an index instead of as an image with blobs. I think there's going to be a point that some tool like that says, great, we think enough registries out there updated. We're just going to make the switch over here to this one because we're tired of pushing this extra config blob. My guess is you're going to start seeing a couple of those cases, and then the industry is just going to say, yeah, we're tired of shipping that config blob too. Let's just make the change.
Yeah, but BuildKit got away with it because of Docker Hub.
Yeah.
And I don't think it worked right out of the box. Like had to actually make changes in Docker Hub before that.
Oh, I'm still trying to get changes to fix things they got. So
yeah. So when you
I just-
have a yeah, I guess if you can get Docker Hub to do it and some of the clients to do it, then you know that will be motivation to get other registries to do it. I'm not even sure who's the biggest registry today, like where everybody's using. Like I assume it's Docker Hub, but you know it's hard to say. Like so many different registries out there now.
Yeah, Hub is definitely huge. GCR on the Kubernetes side is definitely huge, and everybody's pushing out GitHub Actions, so GHCR as well.
Yeah, I really like the GitHub's registry now. It's super convenient as well. So, but you know that's like
that's open source at least.
Yeah, getting 3 big registries to adopt a new endpoint that's complicated is tricky.
Yep. Yeah, and then on the company side, everybody is using ECR. Everybody is, pick your cloud. They're using that registry.
Yeah, and I mean, I think getting adoption is sort of one of the things that concerns me about proposing like the ability to filter on any annotation, including multiple annotations. Like it seems like when you start trying to do that and scale it, you need something a lot more complicated than a simple index.
I think realistically, like the index is going to be just on the reference, and then it's just filtering what gets returned. I mean,
yeah.
I wonder how much some of these could blow up in terms of like, thousands of references causing like slowdown on registries. But yeah, I think that's up to registries to figure out, because now we're talking about adding an index in the registries that could just grow unbounded.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't, but it gives that possibility in the API.
Yeah. And these annotation fields can be quite large and probably most of them will not be used to filter.
There is the non-ideal middle ground here, which is you're probably going to have less than 10 of these coming back. And so if you're saying set your index on just the reference descriptor itself, then you can do that parsing server side of saying, I'm already pulling these manifests to include them into the list here. Let me just do that annotation filter on the fly.
Right.
It's not an ideal point, but when you're talking about less than 20, it might not be that horrible.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're talking about less than 20, it's fine, but I think we're going to find that
someone will break it.
Someone's going to want to push signatures that expire frequently, and
yeah,
then you're going to have hundreds or more.
Yeah, the use case I
it's-
keep
I don't
going
know.
back to, the one I keep thinking of is that somebody's going to push a daily security vulnerability scan signature.
Scanning too. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think scanning and signatures both have the possibility to get.
Yeah. I think the
To
scan will
be-
be a signature. I think the scan server will have its own signing certificate and just say, okay, I've signed this. This has been scanned today.
Mhm.
And then the check on the client side is just, is this image signed by both of these authorities, one, the scanner, and two, the original vendor?
Yeah.
You said something about ordering references.
So
What's
I do
the
have sorting
expectation?
in here. Yeah, I've got sorting and I've got filtering. And so should support filtering based on these operators, and then should support sorting. I had ascending or descending. Basically, it's like sort whatever the field. And I did include like a comma separated list if you needed to get more complex. I hope for the kinds of things they're sorting on, you're never going to get more than one, but just in case. That's kind of where I was going with it. Only string sorts, just like all the comparison, only string comparisons. So I'm not getting anything beyond that for right now, at least.
Yeah, that's tricky. I think, yeah, loading all the objects into memory on the registry side to try to figure out those out. Be a little tricky.
Yeah. Like I say, I did keep this to should, just because I know there's going to be someone that says, no, we're not going to do it, no matter what we do.
Yeah. There's also
And then-
registries that are basically just backed by a blob store, right? They don't even have a database.
Mhm.
Starting to ask them to filter is probably a tough ask.
The one thing I did say is that at least for pagination, it has to come back with some kind of order that can be paginated. You can come back with multiple pages. So even if you don't sort the way the user requested, you need to have some kind of sort so you can do, okay, page 1, page 2, page 3. Unless you just return everything in one response, but I don't think we want to let them get the response too large. That could potentially upset clients too. We should keep these indexes at our 4 meg limit that we kind of agreed on. And so given that's a should, if we come down to this thing, that this is kind of the response that there'll be an annotation on top of that index that just says, hey, I processed your request with these parameters. And this can come back and say, you asked me to filter all these things. I didn't do any of it. My filter list is empty. My sort list is empty. I didn't do anything for you at all. Maybe this annotation didn't even there. And then that just pushes all the workload off to the client. The
Yeah,
ideal
makes
here,
sense.
though, is that we get it done on the server side, at least from the client perspective.
Yeah, from the client, that could be like ultra expensive operation.
Depends on
Like-
how many results they got to filter. Yeah.
Well, not just that, if the, wait, is the expectation here that all the filter keys are inside the manifest annotations?
All the annotations should be pulled up. So when the server generates that index, they should all be included in that manifest. So the client does have all the data they need to do it themselves, but just the server populating this entry in here, that should also give the server the content they need to filter as well. I'm hearing the gears turning of thinking of all this is going to get too much data back on these requests, which
Well,
I agree.
it's just a lot of. So, okay, so you save a manifest, you throw a blob into a directory. I'm just trying to think of it from the flow of how registry. Now you say, When you do that, you make a back reference that says, hey, this digest here is now associated with this as reference, or you go to what it's referencing, and then you create a reference by or something
Mhm.
record in the directory. I'm thinking about how like distribution might work, right?
Mhm.
And then now I come in and I say, hey, give me references, which references is almost referenced by. Is that true? In terms of,
In terms of how you think about it, yeah, when you
yeah,
come into one of these references and you say, here is my reference here on this object is going to be like your signature. You're going to say, my reference is this image that I am signing. So
yeah, but you're gonna go to that image and you're gonna
yes.
say, give me the reference. What
So
this image is referenced
whatever
by.
this digest is here, if I query this digest, I should get back
Yeah, that
the
whole thing.
annotations on this object.
Gotcha. Yeah, so this object here, that A1 is gonna have in its references directory now a new link to this manifest object. And whenever I go to query, it's got to read all, not just the objects, but, well, I guess that depends on how you implement on the registry side. So I guess instead of just doing a small like symlink approach, you could do a store this whole object, store all the annotations and everything.
You could, in addition to storing this object references the other, you could store the entire descriptor and not just a small pointer. And so you could package this entire descriptor up right here. I'm saying here is one of them, and then you just have a whole collection of them. How
Yeah.
that looks in a database, I'd have to look that from the server side. I don't know as well.
Well, and I think it's what Michael was saying. It's like most the implementations are, you have some blob store underneath it, and you end up just doing a lot of reads to pull that data in.
Mm-hmm. And this is, even this API, it is a should. Well, it exists, and there is the comment here that, hey, if it doesn't exist, if it doesn't work, just give us a 404, and then we fall back to the tags.
I mean, all the reads are inevitable though, that this object is going to have to be pulled in. It's not like, well, so for example, the way I think Docker Hub would do it is you have this backing, you have everything backed by S3, right? And when you actually go to fetch data, it doesn't return the data directly. It always returns a symlink that's going to go through CloudFront or something to actually access the data in S3. So there's this assumption that the data is kind of available for you in S3 so that the registry itself isn't eating up all of those like reads to the back end for the data. And then you can actually cache some of that.
Do they do that for manifest and other API requests, or do those go direct? So I'm sure blobs would all go through. Like
blobs do. I'm not sure about all the manifests. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, you could look at, how the CloudFront middleware is implemented in distribution.
Yeah, because there are two approaches I can think of from the server side. One is just to say, here is the digest I'm querying. So whatever this reference is, I think I said 000 at some point somewhere. And then here are all the individual descriptors and just save a bunch of those as individual, however you're storing them associated with that. Or you can go a layer below and say, okay, let me store this, the media type, this, the size, this digest, here, all the annotations, and then just rebuild this every time. I can see someone saying, yeah, we don't want to rebuild every time just for performance. But at the same time, storage and being able to parse it apart, there are pros and cons.
I mean, it depends what type of backend you're using. Like a lot of the backends are kind of eventually consistent in nature, right? So like
Mhm.
rebuilding it every time would be a completely different model. Like if you're have a consistent database, um, then sure, rebuild it, but that's expensive. Or
Mhm.
you can have a background process that goes and rebuilds it as well. You can like trigger it. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways. Definitely
Yeah.
multiple options to do it. I'm just trying to think about what that ends up looking like.
One of my thoughts and next steps on this was we've got a couple things in here that we can do today. Because this, I definitely hear you. There's a lot of thought that we need to still think about on the API, especially getting into the filtering and sorting and whatnot. We've got this part right now on the image manifest that I think we could probably start working on a PR for this one. And then I don't know at all where PR belongs, but I think we can probably come up with a relatively quick agreement on this what a digest tag is going to look like. This is the format, and then hopefully find a place. If we do those two things, we've got a solution that people can use today, no changes to a registry, other than I think we'll have to make sure AWS is on the page with us. Don't mean to single you guys out, but just making sure that we're not hitting any of the media type filters that happen on over there. And so with those two things, I think we get that forward momentum that we're looking for, but also a little bit of breathing room to say, okay, we've got something that users today can all agree on and start working with. And that gives us the time to say, okay, let's make sure to do this other stuff right. Let's make sure we get these filters and sorts and how we're going to come back to this response. We can go back and forth on this a little bit longer to make sure we sort it all out and done right while having that other stuff happen in parallel.
Well, I mean, we could go back and forth on it all day until like it's if if we just go back and forth on it, then whatever is out there today is what wins.
Well, so this is always like what we're throwing out there now with the digest tag stuff like that. That's always been kind of the thought process of it's good enough to start with, but we want to be somewhere better. Everybody wants to have this API in the registry, and then once we have the API, we know we've already got the new media type. Hopefully, got approved at the same time. So hopefully, we'll get registries updated with everything at some point. I think where I'm going with the breathing room is we might want to take a step in this one and say, let's actually implement this in distribution and see what it looks like over there and see if we're breaking anything. And so it may take us some time to get that implementation put together, but we can still make progress in getting the community a starting point on their side while we're sorting that out.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I like to see the working code as I feel like all good designs, are going to inevitably change once it gets to code. So
Yeah. Do you think we're going to have to change? Go back. Sorry for scrolling on a video call, but best we can do here. Do you think that we would have to change this reference field in some way, or have we kind of gone back and forth on that one? Not just on this proposal here, but this came out proposal B, which had been discussed way back when.
what's the associated config type in this case?
I left it up to just what was going on in the OCI artifact definition, which says that you should have your own config type. But if we look
I mean,
at,
yeah,
they had a couple of them over here.
I feel like it's kind of the config types that trip up the clients.
Yeah.
They don't understand it, but
We've got 3 of them defined right now, which is the image config, Helm, and SIF, at least right now over in OCI. I think most people just stick with the OCI image, even if they aren't really. And then Helm is, I think they're trying to go with their own config, but they're probably
none of
getting stumped by Docker Hub.
I guess the thing is, yeah, none of these use the reference field today.
So
But
these are the
what,
config, but we're doing, make sure I get the right tab here. Of course I don't. That would be the config media type inside the config blob. This is going to be on the image manifest. So we're just changing the image spec and nothing else.
Where does that, what about for the artifact spec?
So this is going to probably be, I think our discussion on the Slack this week was this will be a new media type, which means it needs to be a new repo. And so we need to go through the OCI process of making a new
Sure.
spec.
But sorry, I guess specifically for the config media type, like the way that people have been using the config media type is basically as an artifact type.
Mhm.
And I don't know, it seems as though some of these pieces of information should be on their, like in their own top level fields.
Yeah. And so you're kind of going back to why on earth did I put this as an annotation instead of its own thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I tried to go through this one, because I was debating that, and I'm not solid on either side of this, so I can be swayed other directions here. Putting that as its own field kind of felt like I was making a parallel definition for here's one thing that users can filter on and pass and use to build out the artifact, and everything else is going to be an annotation. And so once I made everything else in the annotation, why did artifact type need to be special?
Yeah.
But like I say, I'm
Well,
I'm not stuck on that definition there. You know,
yeah,
I can be swayed other directions.
I guess I think it partially as I'm approaching it from, I don't love the idea of implementing the ability, like implementing arbitrary sort and filter on any annotation. And if we pulled some of these important fields out of the annotations blob and into top level fields on the manifest or somewhere else where they are clearly special, then we can have a pretty like rational explanation for which fields can be filtered and sorted on and which ones need to be filtered and sorted on by the client maybe.
Mm-hmm. If we did that, if we pulled up artifact type into its own thing, would you then say, okay, users can put whatever other artifacts or annotations, whatever other annotations they want to on their artifact.
Mm-hmm.
But when we build this list here, are we going to still do this? Are we still going to pull it up and give the user all the annotations? Or are we going to say, no, we're just giving you a minimal descriptor here that might say what the artifact type is, but anything else, you're going to have to pull that to find out.
Yeah, I think you could still return the annotations, or you could return a data field that has the manifest entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing I think about when we are returning the annotations is the annotations isn't really bounded, and so potentially you are returning about the same amount of data as is in the manifest already.
Yeah, the data field it adds more overhead when you do the data field. Because your base 64 encodes, it's not as small. The hesitation I have for the data field, as much as I love it and I'm doing it for other stuff already, is just thinking that, okay, the client's going to have to parse that apart, which that's not too difficult. But are we adding in for the average use case a lot more overhead that registries don't want to include? Because the average use case is going to be there's probably only a handful of annotations.
There's also probably only a handful of blobs. Like the average use case is probably pulling fairly small related artifacts and not having to go and pull the manifest just to then pull the one or two blobs
Yeah.
is a feature to me. Like, I think people don't want to have to, they don't, you know, for
It-
signing especially.
It does save a
you're-
round trip. Yeah.
Yeah, for signing especially, you're doing this in the container launch workflow. And so I think we want to be pretty sensitive to introducing a bunch of latency there.
Mm-hmm. No, I've been a big proponent of trying to eliminate these round trips. So you're not going to get a big fight from me on that one. Was there Derek? Were you trying to jump in with something?
No, I wasn't. I was just thinking about that. Yeah, I mean, where the signing validation happens, I mean, I think that's been something that's been up for discussion for a while. Is that an open policy? Is that something that we should do in the container runtime? I know that there's some desire to have it done in the container runtime, but it's the place that we also want to be the fastest. I feel like slowness and at the Kubernetes layers kind of expected. We always try to be as fast as possible when we actually start things up. When we just start off with a digest that's been validated, it's pretty fast. But yeah, if you want to put your policies actually next to your runtime, then yeah, there's a lot of extra fetches that need to happen here. That can slow it down.
Yeah, but I think even if you're doing it in Open Gatekeeper, you're still, you know, there's still typically default timeouts on admissions controllers that if you're doing too many round trips, you can theoretically start to hit.
Yeah, and I guess there's also potential here in the runtime, I think, to possibly do it in parallel to the poll, where basically we can get started on the process and validate it while we're doing the unpack. There's not too much. I mean, the worst case scenario is we wasted that effort, but we can still parallelize the process and throw it away at the end. Like the idea that, you know, we might pull some malicious content briefly and then throw it away, I think is less of a concern. It's more about executing the content.
So I'm still thinking through the data versus annotation. What are your thoughts on allowing either or? And my own hesitation on either or is we're adding complexity to the spec that I don't want to add to the spec. And so I'm trying to optimize for, I don't need to send everything if I don't need to, but
I mean, I think one hop is fine. Like if the result in this index, I can just look at it and be like, oh, this is what I care about. I'm gonna go fetch those to validate. But if what we're looking at here is like, okay, we're gonna first do the filter may be slow because on the server side, even doing a bunch of stuff, read this, figure out my own local filters. What do I actually want to use? Now I got to go fetch another manifest. That manifest is going to say, hey, now also go fetch these blobs here, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
I think maybe where the data fields could make sense are inside the signature manifests to prevent like those additional fetches.
Corey, for all the blobs inside of the signature.
I mean, we're probably not talking about huge, yeah,
No.
we're probably not talking about large data. Like the blobs for layers can be large, like embedding them doesn't make sense. But for stuff like signatures, it's nice, like signatures are small enough to just to put in an annotation in the first place. Here, you can put them as a blob, but it might make more sense just to put them in data fields. But to flatten everything out into the index, maybe, I mean, if they're all just signatures, I think we should try to keep, I know we never agreed on that like 4 megabyte limit, but I think we should try to keep to that as a
Yeah,
general
it's
rule of thumb.
not a hard limit, but it would be very nice to the clients if we were able to manage to stick to that.
Yeah, I mean, clients need to set some limit though. Like, I think in Containerd we do set it to 4 megabytes just because, like, at some point we have to say, hey, this is too much. Like, you can't just send unlimited amount of data
Mhm.
back to the client to process, especially if it's going to go through JSON parsing.
Yep, makes sense. So where are we on action items?
So your proposal gets approved, then what? What's the next step?
Well, if that's the next action item, that's awesome. I was wondering if we were going to go other stuff even before we get approved.
Well, these are just proposals, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, there is the possibility that we can say, okay, we've got proposal E. Let's do proposal F that looks at maybe something other than this index syntax. Maybe we do the data field, maybe we change the filters, maybe we pull up just the artifact type in a couple of fields. I'm comfortable if the group says, hey, we need a little bit more time on those things and to sort that out. Otherwise, if everybody says, no, let's stop going around in circles, let's do this one. My own thought process is I'd like to go through and look at, and of course I'm doing hand motions without even having my video on. My personal goal is let's get the stuff out there today that people need to standardize on stuff that they're kind of already doing already, and just get that documented so that people can, at least the stuff they're doing today, they can do it the same way as all the other people they're doing today. And then get this stuff tested within distribution spec to make sure that we aren't breaking anything over here with some of these others, with like the API.
Yeah. I think my biggest concern with filtering and sorting is I don't see a way that registries can implement this in a way that is significantly better than just letting clients do it once they get the manifests.
So if we
for any field,
yeah, if we didn't have the server side sorting and you're just doing the filtering, supposedly the server is going to have all the detail needed to do the filtering as it's generating that index on the server side. And so it could just mean this is dropping items before you can throw it on that index really quick and saving the client going through multiple pages of results and getting it down to one page. Not the perfect answer to your question, because I can guess where you're going with that concern. And I hear you. I want to find a way we can solve this.
I guess it feels like most users will want to filter by artifact type and then maybe sort. I think sort by time, by like the created time, but maybe there's others that we should be considering too. And I think saying we want to do this solution means that it will be, it'll be the same experience to sort for artifact type or filter for artifact type as it is to filter for, I don't know, the value in the annotation that represents the signature, which presumably no one will want to filter on.
I can see them coming back though
And that means we can't provide as good of an experience for those fields that are as common. We can't build an index on just those fields.
Yeah. The use cases I'm thinking of where they're going to filter on other fields are going to be like, I've got an SBOM, but I want to filter on all the SBOMs that are Cyclone DX, to pick one out there. Or I've
Yeah.
got a signature, but I need to find the signature that was signed by this signer. And I'm hesitant to put in there saying, okay, here is us pulling up the signer field into the top level because people are going to want to filter on that for signatures, but that's not going to have a whole lot of value for people generating an SBOM because the SBOM might not even be signed within that artifact. It might be another artifact on top of the SBOM that provides a signature.
Yeah, that is also true.
No matter how many times I try to think of all the use cases, someone's going to have another one. But yeah, I'm trying to find that balance between all the end users are going to want to filter on every type, and the registries are going to want to filter on a small handful of things they can efficiently index. And there's not an easy way to come up with a middle ground there.
Yeah, I approved it. I think yeah, I think the final version might go through some iteration, maybe even having some common pattern. Because yeah, realistically, it might be that most of the requests end up looking the same anyways, and registries want to cache on that or something. You know, like, yeah, you talked about, it's like there's that common case that, like, say most clients are gonna just put together the same exact requests, or same exact set of filters, and then there's that, like, yeah, that's going to cover like 99%. Then there's going to be this long 1% tail of, oh, I want to sort on this field and this field, and you know, for the most part, the clients will just want the latest signature, latest scan, you know, latest SBOM, whatever, you know. And it'll make more sense for registries to just GC stale content rather than to focus on, you know, how do I sort all this stuff out?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one because I do think there's going to be a GC question at some point we're going to have to answer, even though we don't like to touch GC as part of our CI for whatever reason.
I mean, the thing is, we don't need to be prescriptive about it. I'm just saying from the registry's perspective, if usually users are just saying, hey, just give me what's relevant, you know, don't give me a bunch of old stuff. And if the registries can pretty much determine what's relevant, like if you set a bunch of like daily scans of something, you probably don't care about anything except for the most recent scan.
So let me ask you this. We've got a handful of them defined up here: the org, open containers, artifact type, description created. What if we said that some registries are going to say they're only going to filter on these for you? And that gives you the ability to say, hey, we're going to go up there, we're going to index these annotations out from whatever you give us, and put that in our own registry or in our own database. And then when the query comes in, if someone queries on just those fields, they'll get back in that little annotation at the end that says, hey, we filtered on those things you queried on us because you stuck within those annotations. But if they query anything outside of that, you just drop that filter. You don't need
Yeah,
to filter on
but
it.
what I'm saying is, like, okay, what I probably care about is a much more complex query than that, right? you said sort on creating and these specific types, but it's like, well, I want the latest signature, I want the latest SBOM. Maybe that's it. I just want those two. But it could be that you have a process that's coming in, it's creating a signature every day. And say you created an SBOM once when the artifact was created. Now you have a super complicated query trying to be like, sort, group by type, sort by created, limit one. You see what I mean? Like the sort of like complicated SQL queries to try to like group and stuff. Or you have to break it up into like multiple requests.
I think those are going to be multiple requests though. I think you're going to have one request that's going to come in and say, give me the signatures, and a second request that's going to come in and say, give me the SBOM. I don't think we're going to get both of those in the same request unless someone just says, give me every artifact, every reference. In fact, from the spec here, from the stuff that I've written, I don't think it's possible to query for both. Because I say you can say equals, but if you say that it must equal an SBOM, and then you make another one on the same field, it's going to say, well, there's nothing that equals both SBOM and signature because those are mutually exclusive.
So you can only pass one filter parameter.
You can pass multiple filters. So this is going to be like, you can multiple parameters, you just keep going through all of them. But any response to your filters has to match all the filters.
Yeah, that's gonna be tricky.
Because the goal here is to say that if you don't support one of the filters or any of the filters, the user just gets back more data.
Yeah.
It's not that we're corrupting that kind of complex query. It's just, you just get more data back and now the client has to do the filtering out.
Yeah, I think maybe the filters will almost be better off like being broken out to just say type equals something. And then you can specify and support annotation filters if you want. Anyways, yeah, this is the type of thing where I feel like once you actually start to code it, it's either going to make sense or not make sense, or it's a server or a client. But
this was also the area I got to when I was thinking of, do I start having those special fields like artifact type and whatnot? Well, now I have to put other query parameters on here of, okay, I'm filtering for an annotation and then I'm filtering for the artifact type. I can see it's getting a lot more complicated. And if I just said, okay,
I mean, you could
get
this
field.
You could get infinitely complicated. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Until you just basically end up with something that looks like SQL.
Yep. All right. Well, I used your whole hour up. I'm not sure if you have another meeting come up after this, but if you do, feel free to jump. And this was super productive for me.
Cool. Yeah, I got to jump. Yeah, thanks for going through it.
Yeah, same.
You bet.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.